Welcome to Resolve IBS and IBD Naturally. I'm Courtney Cowie, a nutrition therapy and functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. If you are struggling with the symptoms of IBS or IBD and want to get to the root cause of your symptoms so you can take back your health through a whole person approach, this podcast is for you. Just a disclaimer that the information I'm presenting in this podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be taken as medical advice. You should always consult a qualified practitioner before making any changes to your health or medical regimen. That being said, let's get on with the show. All right. So today I have Sophia Torrini with me on the podcast, and I'm super excited for our conversation. She's coming at holistic health from kind of a very interesting mind, body, spirit place, kind of the mind body connection. And so, Sophia, I want you to start by just describing a little bit about your background, what you do specifically, and how you got into kind of the mind body healing space.
So my background is in epidemiology, which is, I have a master's in public health and epidemiology, which is the study of diseases. Yeah, looking trends and what the population is and doing clinical trials. And I've worked in the hospital setting, and I also was a network engineer at some point. So I have the computer part up a little bit, understanding how computers work, which is very helpful because the body is a computer and a battery. So how did I get into it? Well, I did what everybody else did, just worked very hard, climbing the corporate ladder, but I could not handle my emotions. I didn't even know, to be quite honest, connecting with the body was. I was purely disconnected till one day I did not listen to my intuition. Actually, I listened to it, but I didn't fully stand up to it. And I ended up having an unnecessary surgery that almost costed my life and
Oh,
caused a condition that I had, or at least triggered a condition that I had for 16 years. But there was one question that always remained in me, and I somehow was there and I wasn't listening, that the body knows how to heal. Okay, so there's something in it that it knows how to self-heal. And I was not a big fan of removing organs, which was saved me because I refused to do so.
yeah.
And moving forward, there was another belief that, the body just doesn't shut down overnight because it decided to. So something triggers the body to shut down, which is what happened to me. So after looking for years and pretty much everybody telling me that it was a hopeless case, in the beginning they were telling me I wasn't going to live, but I did live. But then afterwards that I'm going to be stuck with it for the rest of my life, but they weren't giving me an answer. How did it happen overnight? There were some patterns that I did attract, so I will address that later. So here I am with this condition, and my life is miserable and debilitated. So I constantly have flare-ups, and I started reading Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. And I had read it before, but since I had a medical background, I discredited it. I said, it can't be possible.
Yeah.
So I went back and reread, and now it made a lot of sense to me. But there was one component that I was missing. So part of Dr. Joe's teachings is to overcome your body, your environment, and time. And your personality creates your personal reality. And I could not grasp how I was going to overcome the body and especially master my emotions. So, yeah, I went into meditation, but it was it was torment for me for more than a year. I could not master any emotions. I could not get into the void because I was immediately going to a death scene, which
Yeah.
was I had been imprinted in me. So I had heard about EFT. I had discredited that as well, but I ended up having a very good EFT practitioner. And she put a little added twist to it, which I will address because I do them too. And I worked with her in the beginning 7 days a week because once I started with my emotions, I could not turn them off. I did not know where to stop. And the anxiety and the panic that all was in me was just coming up because I had no control. It didn't last for too long, but that's what actually happened to me.
Okay.
So she was an excellent practitioner. And then I realized the two of them now work together. My meditation started becoming much better. And now I was able to open up my heart because I could not open up my heart. I was also able to forgive. And forgiveness is not for the other person. Forgiveness is about you letting go of that story and that unfortunate experience that happened to me. There's nothing I could do to change it. It happened to me. So holding on to that anger and resentment was only poisoning me. So, and when you talk about digestive issues, what is digestive issues? So usually constipation is unresolved trauma, usually with anger and hate that you're not able to let go. So the let go goes with constipation. Diarrhea is something that is too hard for you to digest. So you've got part of it, you swallowed it, but now you don't want to digest it. So you want to push it out of your system as fast as you can. Nausea is that morsel of information is nauseating you, that experience from reality so much you want to throw it up. You don't even want it in your system. So those are the variations in there. So they all have to do with not wanting to digest or not being able to digest or letting go. So when there's constipation, there's definitely the desire. I can't let go of this anger. I can't let go of this story. I can't let go of this pain, whatever it is, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's so fascinating. And I think as you say that, I've heard something along those same lines. Like, I think too early on when I was on my gut health journey, I got into like Louise Hay's book, and she's got a lot of sort of symbolism built into how these symptoms show up in the body. And as of the last year, I've kind of gone a little bit into German new medicine, and there's, those same ideas about like, what is this really symbolizing on this unresolved conflict level, right? And so I find this so interesting because clearly you've been through this process with yourself, Sophia. So I think the question that's coming up as you're describing all this is like, for the listener who's struggling with whether it's diarrhea or constipation or nausea or other GI symptoms, what if they're thinking to themselves like, well, I don't know what that could be, right? Like, what would you say to that?
Well, it's a process. The best thing you can do, and I want to say an interesting story that I heard also uh, from another EFT practitioner. It's really basically connecting with the body. I can tell you that once I started connecting and feeling where there were no bowel sounds and the intestine was almost dead, when I would release something, I would hear come to life. Even my practitioner would hear it over Zoom. It would be so loud, and then, of course, it would stop. So when you connect in the body, because what is emotion? Energy in motion. And what does the energy in motion have? Information. So let's dig deep here to grasp what it is that's happening. So all information that is produced from our thoughts and activate the limbic brain to produce chemistry. If it's not felt, that chemistry gets stored in the body.
Mm.
And as children, we do not know how to process it, right? So there's a tight space in the body, and you're putting more chemistry and more chemistry and more chemistry. And by not feeling that chemistry, it gets toxic. So imagine it's like a DNA twisted. Remember, because everything is a fractal pattern of information. And now there's so little space. There's more information twisted, more information twisted, more information twisted, and it comes inside the body. And often enough, it could feel like a knot. So when you go for a massage, the person says, well, I feel a knot here because it's all this unprocessed information. So the new person who's trying to engage, start listening to the body because the body has its own story. And first we clear our feelings towards the body because we always believe, and was a hard one for me, that my body failed me.
Mm.
My body did not fail me. My body did the best it could given the attack it was receiving.
Mm-hmm.
And German new medicine actually goes very well in that. I'm a big fan of it. And
Mm-hmm.
certain conditions that they claim that are happening, it's actually the body's response to an attack when it
Mm-hmm.
feels that it was violated. And that was the case for me because the body knew that what was being done was wrong. I even stood up for it, right? So then, of course, the body did what it had to do. And in the beginning, I was angry, thinking that my body failed me. It didn't. It was
Yeah.
just showing that it subconsciously knew that that was wrong.
Right. Right. For
So
sure. Yeah, no, that's so fascinating. And kind of the way I've heard it described too is that these symptoms or these problems that we call them, right, they're really solution spaces. Like it's one way of the body working out a solution to this deeper unresolved conflict, right? If we want to call it that, or the attack, right? And there's an adaptive mechanism behind it all. And so I find it really fascinating when you're on that journey of trying to figure all of this out for yourself, just moving into that relationship of not being antagonistic with what's going on. And I think developing curiosity and just trying to understand, like, what is the deeper message here that, my body's trying to give me on this physiological symptom level, right?
the
For
body wants to work with you. And a lot of people, because it's common, have this idea that they don't remember their past. So I was listening from another practitioner, but the same thing has happened to one of my clients. So she had a client that had a lot of challenges, but claimed that her upbringing was great. And she was the problematic child.
mm,
They did a lot of tapping and she cleared it. And then there were a few techniques connecting you with the younger self or doing picture tapping.
mm,
And when she was doing the picture tapping, she started using the pen to stab the people. Turned out at that moment, she uncovered some memories that she was violated as a child. And
oh,
she
wow.
was not aware of it, right? So once that is healed, then true healing takes place. So her mind, in order to protect her, blocked those memories because a 4-year-old, it could happen at a young age to her, can't process it.
Yeah.
But somehow, because there's always innate guilt when something like that happens, even though it's never your fault, she
Hmm.
had created the belief it was her fault, even though she didn't know. And so she had the great parents, but the parents didn't do anything. But when she drew the picture, it took a while to get there. You don't do it overnight, several sessions. Then the aggression came from the younger self, and then the memory once the aggression was released,
Yeah.
the memory appeared.
Wow. Wow. So maybe let's talk a little bit about EFT because I'm kind of a novice and it sounds like what you're describing is almost like a next level of applying that technique to really get into kind of the trauma
Yes.
behind some of these things. So I'd love to hear you kind of explain really what that is and how deep that application can go, Sophia.
Okay, so all disease is a lowering of frequency, right? That's all it
Yeah.
is. And we carry limiting beliefs that are there. Below limiting beliefs are emotions
Yeah.
and then our thoughts. Even
Yeah.
though the thoughts trigger, but on the higher level are beliefs. Those have a big stronghold. So it's not the other way around that they're deep rooted down there. They're actually up here, but we've blocked seeing them for whatever reason, right? So
Mhm.
what holds beliefs? The glue is the emotion. Thoughts are electric and emotions are magnetic. And the emotional field of the body is way much bigger than the thought field of the body, which is why it has more pull. And every time we have a thought, there's going to be an emotion produced. There's chemistry that's going to be triggered to be produced, and that gets stored in the body. Right, so
Mhm.
we've discussed that, and unless we take a moment to feel for it, it's going to linger. I want to make a clarification. Emotions and feelings are not the same thing. So
Mm.
emotions are these universal bodily sensations that we have, and if you feel it without any judgment, without any labeling, it's going to happen and it's going to be over in less than 2 minutes, 90 seconds to be exact. But unfortunately, we don't know how to feel the energy because it's overwhelming to us. And then we create a story, and now we add more chemistry to it, and now the feeling lingers, which is how it stretches out to a month, a week, and whatever. And it goes on forever. So tapping is a energetic modality, a combination of cognitive psychotherapy. So you are addressing the ego as well. And by physically tapping at the body's meridians point, you are moving by putting, I want to address two steps, by putting your awareness. So we don't just tap. We're supposed to actually breathe into that belly breathe and put our awareness there. So most people don't address the importance of belly breathing. Why? Because belly breathing is spirit. Chest breathing is your ego. So when you put your light of consciousness on it without wanting it to go away, just accepting it, even though at the back of your mind you want it to go away, but for 5 minutes, you just keep your awareness, which is your light, and then by physically tapping and moving, that information is going to move out. A lot of times it might be very painful for 3 minutes or 2 minutes, but it's not going to linger for a lifetime. So once we clear all that, now we can find, if you want to use EFT, because it does a lot of stuff, you can go and find your younger self. So ask the younger self, connect with the younger self to release that energy, because that younger self is what is frozen in time, causing you the challenges today. It's not you who's having the challenge today. It's that unprocessed memory from then that's causing the issue now. So once we clear that, now we can rewrite and re-imprint a new memory. And when we do that, you're actually moving to a parallel timeline.
Yeah.
That's
And
our goal.
yeah, and that's where you're kind of bridging that gap into Joe Dispenza's work a little bit with working
Yes.
with the quantum field for sure. So quick question on what you just said, because I just find this so interesting. Do you find in your experience working with clients that typically there is one critical memory for most people, or do you think that there's actually a series of things that all have a similar energy kind of blueprint that kind of builds this block in the body?
There is usually a combination of few traumatic memories and then tons of memories replaying, but usually there's like a few imprints. We call them the original seed or original imprint. That usually happens between the ages of 1, actually from the womb till about 13. A great memory that was truly healing on the 7th session was someone who had Tourette's. So she had Tourette's her first, and I don't know if your clients know Tourette's, it's like this nervous, uncontrollable tic, and it could be accompanied with uncontrollable cursing. So the person just can't control their movements, keep on shaking. It could be very aggressive, and they don't want to, and they feel very embarrassed. And obviously it's very challenging. So when I took the intake, she said it was the age of 4. I just, for whatever reason, I knew it wasn't the age of 4. So I had made a suggestion, and she followed through to do a birth reimprint. So when we re-imprinted her 2nd trimester, the symptoms flared up to the extreme, and I asked what the embryo was seeing, and a memory came to her that her mother is being slammed on the crib while she's pregnant. So all those shakes of the violence of the mom being slammed contributed to uncontrollable shakes like I'm doing now to my body. Right? So that's how the embryo learned it. And she had a lot of anger. Well, she had a lot of anger to the situation plus the father, which explained her uncontrollable anger to her father, because the embryo knew that it was the father beating the mother while she was pregnant to her.
Wow, that is crazy.
And so once that got re-imprinted, the symptoms dissipated. Usually the person has to do some follow-ups and then they're permanently gone. But now that all you needed was one thing. I did start with clearing her anger in the now before I can go into the womb. So you can never go into the past if you're unsettled with the now. That doesn't mean your now has to be fully healed. You just have to be neutral. And
Mm.
then we go to the younger self, and we are always asking not what we think or remember, what is the actual younger version of us is saying.
Oh,
And
so
that's a
interesting.
lot of mistakes. A lot of people says, well, I was angry then. I'm not asking you what you were then. I want to know what that version of you that's frozen in time
Yeah.
he feels for you now. And a lot of times it's similar, but it's not exactly. So I may be feeling angry now, but that younger self was fearing terror because I'm mature to know that I survived the situation, but that version of me that's in it is terrorized because I don't know, let's say, what to expect, which is
Mm.
why we have to treat it very differently. And you could do the same thing. You can go into the future, meet your future self, bring that future self in your now time. I like doing that because a lot of times they ask me for advice. Well, I don't have the answers for you. So what I do is I take them to their future self. I have a process that I do. I write notes what the future self answered, just exactly what they said. So the client asks the question. Sometimes I'll make some suggestions to the questions, and now they have the answer for their future self. So it wasn't me who said it.
Mhm.
And we can bring other parties in and ask, what do they want to do when we bring their higher versions? So if EFT is used to its fullest, it has a lot of capabilities. You can go to other lifetimes. We don't dwell on other lifetimes because, as Dr. Joe teaches, if it's happening in this lifetime, then there was a trigger in this lifetime. It may be coming from another lifetime, but you heal it now, you're healing it at that lifetime. So if you need to get a little piece of information, you can,
Yeah.
but you want to address the now as well.
Do you find yourself getting up super early on work days in order to get done with multiple runs to the bathroom? Or waiting and waiting to finally have a bowel movement? Has living your life around unpredictable bowel movements and other chronic gut symptoms left you feeling trapped, stressed, and dealing with anxiety? There are often hidden factors and stressors driving these symptoms, factors that your doctor isn't trained to help you find. Getting to the bottom of these factors, along with the right nutritional approach, is the key to resolving your symptoms. Interested in learning more? Click the link to grab my free e-guide. So that's a very interesting point I want to ask you about, Sophia, because as I've explored more and more about energy healing and working on stored emotions and blocks in the body, I've I've spoken to different practitioners who are very focused on intergenerational healing to the point where sometimes they will say that often when people are ill, it's going back beyond their lifetime. Do you find that that's not so much true that there is for most people like an actual trigger in their very lifetime that is causing the
There
illness for
always has to be a trigger in this lifetime. So yes, so there is some validity to it, and I will agree. So
them?
the embryo gets not 100% 50 and 50 from each side, right? So it gets 25 and then 25 from the previous generation. So previous generation. So you do have all those patterns in you, right?
Yeah.
But let's address, why do you have those patterns? Those are, it's unresolved, either for you to be prepared in this lifetime or unresolved trauma that you agreed to have. Can ancestral healing is a good idea? Yes, but not to the extreme they take it, right?
Mm.
So we don't dwell in this. First of all, anybody, regardless of what your agreement was, is my personal belief, you have the ability to clear it. As long as you had the experience and you got the message that you needed out of it, there is no source that's going to hold you hostage for the whole lifetime or 50 other lifetimes because you did something gazillion years ago.
Yeah, for sure.
So contracts can be modified. What's the purpose of keeping you stuck? The whole purpose of your evolution is to get to know yourself with the least amount of entropy, right?
Mhm.
So there's no need for you to suffer. Then that would be a vindictive source.
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So if it's happening now, something caused the trigger right now, or there's somehow it's related to the lifetime. You heal the now, you can connect with it to see
Mhm.
if there's another aspect, and now you've healed it and collapsed it from both, and now you're free to go.
Yeah. And I actually think what you're describing is more tangible to people, right? Because I know just as a person who's dabbled with these tools and not gotten super deep, like I'm sitting here thinking, wow, like it seems even daunting just to try to go back to my child self and like connect with what was going on because I'm sure you've seen this with many people you've worked with, like we tend to repress and block and just forget a lot of things, right? And then to imagine going back into my ancestral line and trying to connect with some trauma that happened 2 3, I mean that just seems like such a larger reach, right? Like if I had to choose, I would so much rather work with my own life and try to access my own memory bank, and I feel like that feels more hope inducing and just promising to me, right? Like as a person contemplating doing the work. Yeah.
Well, what I would often do, like a portion of the session, I will work with the person and I will ask, go into an open field and we call all the versions of you and any other prior lifetimes. And then
Mhm.
if someone shows up from then and there that has a grievance, comes forward. So
Mm.
I don't do it in every session, person, if they're working for me for a while, we do it 2 or 3 times max. And then, a message came, which is a version of you that's connected to this one that seems to be having a grievance. That unfairness or whatever it is took place right then and there. So we tap on that version and we clear that, and it ultimately clears you. So I want to empower the concept of this healing because a lot of people believe that the illness is in the body. The
Mm.
illness is not inside the body. The illness is in the blueprint that we're being projected because we're in a holographic universe. And that's where the imprint is. And when we heal the imprint, we actually shift to a parallel timeline where the body doesn't have that imprint. So you're not healing this vessel. It's always you're healing the mind,
Mm.
the emotions that the mind is projecting that's going to move you to a parallel timeline that already exists that's fully whole.
Yeah, and that makes sense to me. And I think one of the ways I've heard Dr. Joe Dispenza kind of describe this is that if we think about the frequency states of like high energy or high health, I guess, good health, right? Like just by universal law, like we can't have a sick body and a healthy mind coexist, right? And so if we understand in quantum physics that like condensed energy becomes matter, right? Like we have to work from that highest vibration or highest frequency form to bring it down to the physical manifestation.
That's
Is that
correct.
kind of right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you hit that
Yeah.
on the nail. There was Dr. David Hawkins who did the maps of consciousness. If
Yeah.
you go on his map, you will see at 540, which is unconditional love and joy, spontaneous healing. So
Yeah.
if you are in that state, even if you had stage 4 cancer before and you can maintain that state, I don't know how, but it will disappear.
Yeah.
Okay, so the body cannot be a vibrational match to illness when you feel whole
Yeah.
or you feel unconditional joy with life.
Yeah, yeah. So, practically speaking, in your work with clients and just what you experienced when you were on your own journey, what kind of like investment from a time and energy perspective do most people have to like realistically put into this kind of process to start to see those results?
Well, it's up to the person how open. I put in a lot of investment because I was completely stubborn. I mean, you had to hit me for it. There was no way I was willing to let go of the medical training I got, but
Yeah,
I did.
yeah, yeah,
So I needed a lot of work. It's a constant road for self-discovery. But usually what people do, depending where they are, if they have serious trauma, I usually like to go intense and not fast, intense and continuously. So you don't stretch your misery out for years, right? So you deal with it, you let the emotions come. So, which is what I did for myself, right? I used to have tapping sessions every single day. Do I have tapping sessions for myself every single day? Absolutely not. I don't need them.
Mm, mm,
But
mm.
did I do that for a year? Yeah, I was a basket case.
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
completely, and I had to let go of these beliefs.
yeah,
And I had a condition for 16 years that debilitated me.
yeah,
So was it worth it 1 full year? Roughly close, it was close to 18 months, but 18 months of continuous, it was worth it.
yeah,
At the
yeah.
time, I thought I'll never come out of it.
Well, right. That's another question that just kind of comes up because I think what I've personally experienced and just through conversations with people who have had complex illnesses, sometimes for years, like you did too, right? Like there's also this sense of hopelessness and I think grief and anger that will
Mhm.
come up because they're grieving the life they had before they got ill and they can't see a future version of life that looks like what they wanted. And so I think my question for you, Sophia, is like, for a person who's in that stage, how do they know if they're truly like progressing through these stored emotions, or is it all the same? Like what they're feeling is also part of the original kind of blueprint or trauma.
If they're feeling their emotions and they're letting it go, they usually get a cognitive shift, I call it. So they get more information, they start seeing things differently.
Okay.
A lot of times when you release something very big, even though you're miserable throughout the process, you may get out of nowhere this 1 hour of relief or joy.
Mm,
Now you know you're on the right track because every time you transmute a low frequency emotion, you're going to get a higher emotion.
mm. That's very interesting.
And once they start watching their thoughts, now you know there's progress. Now, a lot of us, what we do is we resist. So it gets a little worse in the beginning. So you're miserable, but now you're feeling that you're miserable, right? So there's a little period of time that it's going to be uncomfortable. So what we do is we stop it, and now our misery gets even worse, and our symptoms get worse because we did not like to feel that misery that it came up. And if you stay with the process, you can contain those intense emotions only for the session, and they're done.
Mm, mm,
And if you don't ruminate afterwards and try to analyze, you will be moving emotions. And then you're going to get to the point where you're going to be able to navigate it by yourself, right? So, and a good EFT practitioner also requires and trains their client to tap on their own. So you work
mm.
with the trauma with me, which I don't advise the person to do, but the other stuff, your little anger, your internet going down or whatever it is, that you can work by yourself. You don't have to pay me for that.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. But in your experience and in your personal experience and experience working with clients, it sounds like it could take some time for people to really work through a lot of that emotional stuff.
For some, it does, and
Yeah.
there's some who are ready.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
just they're just ready to let go and they move forward. There are a few of those. They don't come that often.
So fascinating. And for the people who are like thinking about this and they're like, wow, this sounds so amazing, but I don't feel like I can tap into that part of myself. Like, what would you say, Sophia? Do you feel like your work helps to facilitate them to kind of go in there and get that information out?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I always say to people, if I could do it, literally thinking that the only model that existed was the medical model.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know what the bodily sensation was. I mean, I would feel a tightness, but I didn't know what it was. I had learned to suppress my anger, and it showed up as frustration. And I was so disconnected that my EFT practitioner says, "You're really angry." I said, "Me? I think you have it wrong. Me? It's not possible. It's me." And I literally thought she was wrong. It didn't take more than 2 weeks. That the anger appeared out of nowhere. So I think they need to trust the process. The process works on everyone as long as they're open and
Uh-huh.
honest and willing to make an effort to feel.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. And I would imagine just being so deeply trained in this, it probably heightens your like intuitive capacities too to kind of help. Like you had even said, you sort of sensed with the one client you worked with that that was more like in utero, right? That whole Tourette's thing that was going on.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's got to be hugely helpful for someone in the very beginning who's like, I have no idea where in my life this is coming from, but I'm open to believing it goes back to some point in time, right?
Yeah, it does. And I could tell, because I've had those same patterns, but I know how to stop them. When you come to the beginning in the EFT sessions, a lot of people want to talk. So the ego wants to talk, right?
Yeah.
So when the personality has taken over to say the story, I already know there's too much trauma in that story. So the best thing to do is redirect and go to the tapping, right?
Yeah.
We want to get rid of that emotion that's creating all these stories around.
Yeah. 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 And I think what you just said is so critical because in my experience in the therapy world, although there is a place for therapy, like, I mean, cognitive behavioral therapy, like traditional forms of talk therapy, I think the one big limitation is it keeps people stuck up in the story, right? Like you're just stuck in that thinking brain mode, which isn't going to tap in to the deeper problems that are causing, especially in the case of physical illness. Like I just rarely see that actually move the needle. And I think that's why a lot of people end up getting stuck in this cycle of doing endless therapy sessions or tons and tons of years of therapy because either the therapist doesn't have a tool to bypass the talking and get into the body and start to work at that level. Or they're just not on that plane of understanding, like, hey, this has got to go deeper than just talking through like all of these memories and stories and problems, right?
Correct. So when we're not safe, we go into our head. That's basically, so we have, for our purposes for this session, we have three bodies, right? So we have the mental, the physical, and the emotional,
Yeah.
right? And there's three parts of the brain that correspond to that. When those three parts of the brain, which is the neocortex, the limbic brain is the emotional body, right? And the cerebellum, where all the programs are, when those three are aligned, now we're harmony and we can control better our lives, or at least experience a better life. So if we're up in the head and we're disconnected from the body, that means there's something wrong in this picture. And you're trying to drive a car from the roof of the car. You can't drive it. You're going to get into an accident, something's going to happen. And
Mhm.
we've been taught that these bodily sensations are something we don't go near them. But the body is the subconscious mind, and your body is your GPS, and it's trying to give you information. So by disregarding the alarm system from the body, at some point you're going to head for disease, which is why often men who don't process their emotions after the age of 60 all of a sudden drop dead like that. It's not that they drop dead like that. There was tension and tension and tension, but the body, you weren't hearing the alarm system.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Well, is there anything else you would like to share with the audience on this whole topic? I feel like I've kind of gone all over the place asking about just the whole process of EFT and the Joe Dispenza work, but is there
Okay,
anything
I
else?
just want to give them a few tips. So,
Yeah.
clinical EFT is evidence-based, and we have over 300 peer-reviewed trials. So one important thing that most people don't discuss often with EFT, it's it resets your amygdala. So it
Mm,
will reset your fear, and it will do a reset for the trauma in the hippocampus. When we work on traumatic memories, what we're doing is we're releasing the emotional charge and we're time stamping them properly so that they don't get triggered all the time.
mm,
The reason they show up constantly is because they're not time stamped properly, and maybe an image of a similar person. All you need is a stimulus and a response, like the Pavlov dogs, and now you're getting triggered 24/7.
mm.
So EFT can do that, right? And what we want to do is have also some conscious choices to start remembering or knowing what science tells us. The brain is neuroplastic. So we can prune those synaptic connections and we create new connections.
Mhm.
And it doesn't matter what your age group is, regardless of who you are, what's your ethnic background, what's your looks, everybody has the same ability.
Mhm.
And why not take back control of your thoughts and emotions without being 24/7 dependent on something external? Yeah, you might need a practitioner in the beginning, but you'll develop the skill to do it yourself.
Yeah. And that's huge. You can heal at any age, is what you're really saying.
Mhm.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing you say is you also empower your clients to learn these skills so that they can
Absolutely.
maintain them for life, which is huge too.
Yes. I
Yeah.
mean, what's the purpose if they're dependent on me all 24/7? I did them a disservice.
Oh, for sure. No, I have that same goal with my clients as well. Although I work more with physical health and, using nutrition and lifestyle changes, which is also important. But same deal. It's like, we haven't done something right if we go through this process and you leave with all these questions and don't know what to do to maintain these results now, right? So, so critical. Well, I love that, Sophia. And I think you have some resources available too for people that are interested in
Yeah.
EFT. Yes.
So I have a few options. They can come and get a complimentary 30-minute session. We can explore some information. If it's health related, we can see the principles of metaconsciousness, which is German new medicine. It's the same exact thing.
Yeah.
So we can see what's the biological cause for your disease. If
Yeah.
you want to have more control and understand how your personality gets created and what's triggering you in your environment, I do teach Dr. Joe's Dispenza's course, Change Your Mind, Create Your Results, which is a very simple but very effective course, and it's not lectures. Most people think it's lectures. No, it's mostly close to 10 to 12 hours of exercises.
Oh,
It's,
that's really cool.
yeah, it's basically exercises and trying to identify what your triggers are in your life.
Oh, how cool. Yeah, no, that's very practical skills to have for sure.
Yes. So in order to master this reality, we said the three brains, we have to have them work together.
Mhm.
So we have to take action. It's not just about knowledge and releasing the emotion and having the cognitive shift. Now,
Mhm.
based on that new reality that we have, or the new the information, the emotion being released, what action am I going to take? Why? Because we
Mhm.
need to produce new positive chemistry. We don't want to
Mhm.
just release the negative chemistry. We want to replace the new chemistry with something more powerful, like I'm successful, I took action, I'm in control of my life. So every time we take action, there's chemistry that gets produced. And we
Yeah,
want
no,
positive chemistry inside the body.
yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And I know just like a tool of coaching is just increasing self-belief by taking action and having those little successes as you go, right? So that makes perfect sense to me, Sophia, for sure. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up today?
Oh, no, as I said, I have the free masterclass if they want to join to find out what it is. But if there's anything else that they need to find out, happy to help. But I want to give a word of hope. This is the one lifetime that we have, that we're
Yeah.
all chose to be here, that we can completely rewrite our stories. So,
Yeah.
because you brought it up in the beginning, any contracts we have had, we can rip them all off. Any karma that we think we have, we can transmute it in this lifetime. This is the one lifetime that we actually have from now, because the timeline started in 2025 and will go up to 2040, that we can choose to have the life we truly want.
Yeah.
And illness does not have to be part of that.
Yeah, I love that. And I think just from my own experience, like if you feel like you've tried everything on the physical level, you've worked with some amazing functionally trained practitioners, and you're still not getting to a place you want, this is kind of the next place to go, in my opinion, because I think you just get to this place where you start to say, like, this goes beyond the physical body now, and the healing has to come from a different tool set, right? And I think just to kind of give you a little shout out too, Sophia, like the little bit I've dabbled with Joe Dispenza, it's powerful stuff, but I really do think the average person trying to navigate that kind of a journey on their own, it's very daunting. Like it really can help to have a guide to accelerate that process and help you see some of these things you can't see for yourself and give you that specific guidance to move through that timeline faster. Is that kind of what you found to be true?
I agree. I think you
Yeah.
need to connect with someone who knows his work and they give you some clues, getting rid of the labels when you have a condition. Going and searching the symptoms is the last thing you should be doing.
Right.
But unfortunately, that's what we all have done. Realizing while nutrition does help,
Mhm.
unfortunately or fortunately, it's the emotion that is the predominant or the trauma that's the original trigger, right? But it
Right.
also gives you hope. If you can, if you're alive today and you had that trauma and you're still on planet Earth, you are meant to heal that. You
Yeah.
weren't taken out of the reality, right? Because if you weren't serving and you didn't have a meaning, you would have gone as all the other souls have gone.
Yeah.
So it's maybe this, you're still here, just to let it go once and for good, because we can cut off all of the traumas from the parallel timelines. Why? Because they're all happening right now. They're not
Yeah.
happening yesterday. I know you think it was in the 1400s, but the 1400s is right here, right now, on a
Right.
different channel. You just need to change the tuner.
Right. Oh, for sure. It's a bit of a mind warp if you've never thought this way. And I know like Joe Dispenza's books are kind of deep in some place. I had to reread certain sections, be like, okay, that makes sense now. But like, yeah, it's freaky. But this is what quantum physics kind of shows us is there's kind of just this one continuous now. There isn't really this separation of past, present, and future as much as our 3D brains want to perceive it that way. So
Yeah, and let's find the cause that's causing the issue.
yeah.
What we do in medicine, we look at the symptom and we go and remove the symptom and then it metastasized. It wasn't that it metastasized. You did not heal the original trauma. That
Mhm.
organ no longer is there. So it's going to find the closest organ that has similar vibration that it's going to go to. So people think, oh, I healed my cancer, but now it metastasized. No, it didn't. You didn't heal the original imprint. Now, if you
Yeah.
heal the original imprint, that condition never shows up again.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I've read about studies of practitioners or researchers who have done like biofield scans of like cancer, survivors and every single one, if that emotional energetic block wasn't resolved, you could see it in the field and with like 100% certainty it would come back, right?
That's
Like
correct.
it's just crazy. It's crazy when you think about just how true that is that, these invisible things eventually become the physical problems that we're dealing with if we don't
Right.
resolve that
And
energy.
German new medicine can take a CAT scan of your brain and tell you which part is affected and what is the condition by just seeing how your CAT scan is,
Isn't
right?
that crazy? Yeah, for sure, for sure. So this is very real science-based stuff, as crazy as it seems, probably if you were hearing this for the first time, it is real. And this is why people like you exist, Sophia, to help others who are struggling really map out that journey. And like I said, I think the most complex cases where, someone's just really tried it all. I mean, this is the next obvious place to look because
Yeah.
it just makes sense, it makes sense.
Yeah,
So
and it wasn't your fault. I mean, no one wants to be sick and miserable.
no, no,
So,
absolutely.
yeah, we just don't know how to function. We didn't come with a manual.
Right, right,
We're
right.
trying to find pieces of the manual and trying to put the manual together, and each person has another version of it.
Oh, for sure. It's kind of the motto, like everybody's doing the best job they can, but nobody really has all the answers. At least most of us growing up, I mean, we're kind of just products of our environment in a sense, right? So, yeah, yeah. Well, this has been such a fun conversation. I so appreciate you coming on. This is an area I'm super passionate about as well, and certainly it's on my to-do list to go deeper with this myself. So, I really appreciate it, Sophia.
Oh, thank you very much. And it was an honor for being on your podcast and just wanting people to know there's a better life for them, no matter if they can't see it. the body does not want to torment you, even though sometimes I get angry at my body. It truly does not want to torment you. It just, we didn't know how to communicate with it.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I will be sure to link your contact information and the resources you mentioned in the show notes. I wanted to be sure to mention that before we sign off. But
Okay.
thank you so much. I appreciate having you on today.
Thank you very much, too.
Did you find this episode informative and helpful? I'd love to have you leave me a 5-star rating. Do you have questions about holistic approaches to optimizing gut health that you'd like to ask? Please leave your question or comment below, and I will be sure to address it personally or cover it in a future episode. Be sure to check the show notes for any resources mentioned in today's episode. See you next time.